Welcome to the show, folks. Today, we're diving deep into the lives of two absolute legends, in the darkest sense of the word, of course. We're talking about Pablo Escobar and Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, two names synonymous with the cocaine trade, brutal violence, and unbelievable, unreal escapes from justice. These guys were like the Tony Montanas of their time, except everything you see in that movie, they lived it, man. We're going to break down 5 key similarities and 5 major differences between these infamous figures. First off, let's talk about the obvious. Both Escobar and El Chapo were the undisputed leaders of their respective cartels. Escobar, he was the head honcho of the Medellin cartel, running things like a ruthless CEO during the Colombian cocaine boom of the 70s and 80s. We're talking billions of dollars flowing through their hands, controlling almost every aspect of the cocaine trade from the coca fields to the streets of Miami. And then you've got El Chapo taking the leadership of the Sinaloa cartel just as Escobar's reign was ending. He might have been quieter, more strategic, but no less ruthless. Both these guys, they weren't just gangsters, they were leaders. You don't move tons of cocaine across borders without an incredibly sophisticated network. And both Escobar and El Chapo were masters of logistics. Escobar, he was known for his extravagant methods. Private airstrips, fleets of aircraft, even rumors of submarines. He was moving so much white powder that he supposedly wrote off 10% of his earnings to spoilage and losses. El Chapo, on the other hand, he was more about tunnels. These were well thought out, sophisticated tunnels. Some of them running under the US borders. Some had lighting, ventilation, and even rail systems. It's insane to think about the level of organization and power they had at their disposal. Now, let's not kid ourselves. These guys were ruthless killers. Their rise to power was paved with the blood of rivals, law enforcement, and innocent people caught in the crossfire. Escobar, he was notorious for his brutality. He once supposedly said, "Plata o plomo," which means silver or lead. Basically, you either took his bribe or you got a bullet. He bombed buildings, assassinated politicians, waged war against the Colombian government. El Chapo, he was no saint either. His Sinaloa cartel was responsible for countless murders, kidnappings, and disappearances. Both Escobar and El Chapo wielded an insane amount of influence in their respective countries. Escobar, at the height of his power, he was practically untouchable in Colombia. He had politicians in his pocket, judges on his payroll, and entire communities living in fear of his enforcers. El Chapo, he might not have had the same public persona as Escobar, but his influence within Mexico was undeniable. He controlled territories, corrupted officials, and even had the loyalty of entire communities. These guys weren't just drug lords, they were shadow rulers, pulling the strings from behind the scenes. It goes without saying that when you're running multi-billion-dollar drug empires, you're going to have some run-ins with the law. Both Escobar and El Chapo were constantly on the run, always one step ahead of the authorities. Escobar, he was public enemy number 1 for a long time. The American DEA, the Colombian government, they were all after him. El Chapo, he was another master of evasion. He escaped from prison not once but twice. The first time, he supposedly hid in a laundry cart. The second time, he used a mile-long tunnel dug right into his prison cell. Now here's where the paths of these two notorious figures diverge. Escobar, he met a violent end in 1993. Gunned down on a rooftop in Medellin while trying to escape. 44 years old, gone just like that. It was a dramatic end to a dramatic life. El Chapo, on the other hand, he lived to see his 60s. Captured, extradited to the US, and now he's serving a life sentence in a supermax prison. Now, let's talk about the grim reality of their businesses. Both Escobar and El Chapo were responsible for an incredible amount of bloodshed. Escobar, he was like a force of nature. It's estimated that he was responsible for the deaths of over 4,000 people. His victims were mostly police officers, journalists, politicians, and innocent civilians. He was waging a war against the Colombian government, and he didn't hesitate to use extreme violence to maintain his grip on power. El Chapo, while certainly not a pacifist or soft in any manner, his tactics were a little more targeted. His Sinaloa cartel was responsible for countless murders, but the numbers are harder to pin down. Both Escobar and El Chapo amassed unimaginable fortunes through their drug empires. We're talking billions upon billions of dollars. Escobar, he was all about cocaine. He controlled the supply chain from start to finish, from the coca fields in Colombia to the streets of Miami. El Chapo, while still heavily invested in cocaine, he diversified his portfolio. The Sinaloa cartel, they were involved in everything from heroin and methamphetamine to marijuana and human trafficking. Both Escobar and El Chapo had their fair share of audacious acts that cemented their places in criminal history. Escobar, he's infamous for blowing up Avianca Flight 203 in 1989. He thought a presidential candidate was on board, but he was wrong. Over 100 innocent people died. El Chapo, he's known for his prison escapes. This dude escaped from prison twice. Once in a laundry cart, and then again through a mile-long tunnel, dug right into his cell. Finally, let's talk about the obvious difference. Their origins. Escobar, he was a product of Colombia. He rose to power during a time of intense political turmoil and violence, and he exploited that chaos to build his empire. El Chapo, on the other hand, he's a product of Mexico. He arrived from humble beginnings in the mountains of Sinaloa, a region known for its drug trafficking. Two different countries, two different paths to power, but ultimately two sides of the same coin. So, there you have it. A glimpse into the lives of two of the most notorious drug lords in history. They were ruthless, ambitious, and ultimately brought down by their own insatiable hunger for power. Thanks for watching. If you found this video informative, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into the lives of history's most infamous figures. Leave a comment below on who you think was the more notorious drug lord. And remember, stay positive and on the right side of the law.